solving social impact issues at scale. So, a lot of the interesting stuff that I'm doing, I shall talk about it towards the end of the presentation. Quick introduction to Zinnov. We're a 10-year-old management consulting company that works with the top technology companies in the world, helping them in their globalization strategy at two levels. One, how do you build better products from India, for India, and for the world? Two, how do you take those products and services to the market in India? We have 120 customers. Most of them are $1 billion plus. Most technology logos work with us today. We're very strong in our areas of focus. When I was informed that I'm going post-lunch session and I'm going at Cloud Connect, I had a look at the agenda, and the first thing that came to my mind was courtesy Dilbert, a comic strip, right? So for 1.5 days, I'm presuming all this audience has been hearing is blah, 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 cloud, blah, 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 platform. So I said, I'll be the philosopher in the room, and I'm not going to talk anything at a technology layer. I'm going to take it back up 50,000 feet and talk to you about the possibilities that modernizing IT is going to do. I'm going to talk about how modern IT is transforming the world, how it's transforming India, and what you and people who work with you can do to participate in this change. Everybody knows this. Technology cycles change very fast, and companies who don't react to it usually go out of business. Either it's speaking onto new business models, it's either identifying a better customer experience, new revenue sources. As technology transforms, there is a host of opportunity that is presented for companies to leverage this technology to transform the way they interact with businesses and with customers. And that's the reason why if you see, generally, when we talk about IT and technology, our conversation goes to the CIO's organization. So if you look 10 years back at home, if you bought a VCR or you bought a new music system, parents would ask the child in the house to take a look at it because they were viewed as the experts, right? So if you look at the kids are native to technology today. My nephew is 2 years old and he plays games on Apple iPad, right? For him, a board game is extremely boring, right? So what's happening is there is transformation around us today driven by technology, and you're seeing that happen in the business context as well. No longer is the CIO the sole authority on what he wants to do with IT and how he wants to use IT. It's now a business conversation, and people are trying to transform business. They want to transform the way they run their business, the way they interact with their customers, because the way the customer is going to interact with them is not the same as it was 3 years back. I work very closely with the top IT companies in India, and one of the most ridiculous questions I was once asked was, I am looking to hire programmers with 5 years experience in Android. It isn't 5 years old, right? There are HR people who use a typical job description and are putting out postings out there looking for talent that is hard to find because this technology is so new. So the question is, what can you do with this massively changing wave around us, right? You've got cloud, big data, mobility, and social networking. Everybody knows these trends. I'm not going to talk about it. I'm going to talk about how companies are using this, how my customers are using this today because their customers are changing. We don't live in a world where you can make products and get away with it. It's product and an ecosystem. If you make a product alone, you can kiss goodbye to your business in 6 months. You have to build an ecosystem around your product. It started with Apple, but it's going across all businesses. Example, GM OnStar. OnStar has got 6 million customers. What do? They provide services. They provide step-by-step navigation. So for those who are not aware, GM OnStar basically is in automotive vehicles in North America, Canada, and the US predominantly. They provide step-by-step navigation. They provide remote assistance, remote diagnostics for the vehicle. It's a technology service, technology-enabled service that is done by an auto company. If you recently heard the speech by the head of Mercedes-Benz at the Consumer Electronics Show, he very bluntly calls out that his competition isn't an automaker, his competition is a consumer electronics manufacturer. We had a German client come to us and say, In 6 years, 40% of my revenue is going to be from services. We said, isn't it already because of after sales support? He said, no. 40% of my revenue is going to come from services that I have never done in my life. It's going to be IT-enabled services. It's going to be technology-enabled innovation. And I don't have these competencies. Can I find it in India to do it? Right? So you're seeing the change happen where auto companies are building an ecosystem around the product. And this is not a global phenomenon. It actually, believe it or not, started in India with Reva. It's my favorite story. A lot of you might not have heard it or might not have heard it. Do you know that Reva has a 60-kilometer radius in the initial vehicle that was launched, right? After 60 kilometers, the vehicle battery charge runs out. So there was always this fear when someone was buying the vehicle that what if my wife is bringing the kids back from school and the vehicle breaks down? So the Reva guy said, don't worry, sir, we will give you a guarantee, you shouldn't have a problem. They said, you don't know my wife, she will forget to charge the car. So you know what Reva did? They said, through an SMS, if your wife sends a message to us, we will be able to remote charge your vehicle to allow you to go another 12 kilometers to reach your nearest destination to charge the vehicle. This is technology-enabled, services innovation enabled through cloud and mobility that is transforming the auto industry. And this is the case across all the industries. Medical devices. You would be surprised to find that medical care has transformed in the last 3 years. If somebody had kidney failure, the only way you could live was going to dialysis and then a kidney transplant. Dialysis requires you to go to a hospital or a clinic and get care under specialized treatment. Today, a lot of people get dialysis done at home through mobile devices, right? So they have smaller devices that allows you to do that treatment. Again, the doctor gets all the information. I spent a lot of time the last 6 months with doctors. You'd be surprised. Indian doctors love to use technology, right? One of the first questions that I asked them is, what is your bare minimum expectation on technology? He said, if you're sending me images of a patient's CT scan, anything less than iPhone quality, I won't even look at it, right? You are actually having doctors in India use teleradiology to treat a lot more patients than they would have. You have companies from India creating compression software to allow you to transmit scan images to remote locations. So you actually have Narayana Hridayalaya using 4 doctors to do the job of 100. Cloud, mobility, social networking, right? We're seeing a lot of these changes happen today. And the reason I bring it up is because it's very easy to get stuck in the technology aspect of it, but unless you take a customer view to the world, you do not know what the possibilities can be with this technology we have today. This, I don't know how many of you have seen this image. This is in Korea, right? So if you go to Korea in the subway, you can actually take a photograph of the grocery you want to order. While you get into the subway, Tesco will deliver it at home, right? This is cloud mobility technology changing a traditional retail business. Believe it or not, there are pilots of this happening in India as well, in Bombay, right? If you look at pure social media, everybody knows the stats. You have a bunch of guys online, you get a lot of people liking the product and all that. But you have companies like Ford designing products with inputs from social media, right? I'll give you an example how Zinnov is using social media. We actually have a product, we call it Talent Neuron. Our customers used to come and say, I want to set up my next R&D center. Do I open it in Bangalore or do I open it in Beijing? Does it make sense for me to open it in Coimbatore versus opening a second center in Dallas? So we said we'll come up with this tool that tracks 200 global locations across 75 different attributes of talent and living. And we said we'll give you this insight for you to be able to take a better call. Then they came back and asked a question. Hey, as per your data, there's a lot of talent in Coimbatore that's good for R&D, but a lot of my peer companies are in Bangalore, and then there's a lot of good talent in Chennai. I'm a little confused. I want to set up in Chennai for certain other reasons because my manufacturing is near Chennai, but will R&D talent migrate to Chennai to work for me? Here comes big data. Now what we do is, we are capturing information from the internet, right, from social media to give a perception index to our customers to tell them whether or not R&D engineers from Bangalore or Coimbatore would be keen to move to Chennai. We are being able to tell them that this is the feedback we're getting. The sentiment is these are the pluses and the minuses of Chennai as an R&D destination. This kind of talent is willing to move there, this kind of talent is not. Right? It is active intelligence we're using cloud. And we're in the consulting business. Technology is disrupting consulting business. It's actually democratizing consulting. Previously in consulting, only a CEO can sign off on a consulting check. Now even the lowest level manager gets access to this information to take a call. We've got examples of banks using big data, we've got a bunch of examples, but when we look at these technologies in the context of India, it becomes a lot more interesting. Because India presents problems that to me are truly challenging, right? Global problems are challenging, but if you want to solve an India problem, hats off to you, because you're not going to just look at product, you're not going to look at ecosystem around a product, you actually are going to have to think about how the bloody hell do I build the whole system. Example, a customer of mine wanted to build a low-cost laparoscopic device for rural markets, right? First challenge, power supply is not available for 10 hours. Second challenge, he will not be able to provide spare parts on time. Third challenge, the doctor there is not necessarily competent to use the device. You know how they re-engineered the product? They used Maruti car spare parts to make 30% of the product because it is easily available and has the largest distribution network in the country. Step one. Step two, because power supply is a problem, mandatory device, Ultrabook. 6 hours battery backup, laparoscopic device, you have no choice. So your device has to be sold with a laptop, that too an Ultrabook that gives you that 7 hours battery backup. Step 3, FDA approval. Whatever device you build, if it is not FDA approved, no Indian doctor will use it. Why? Because if something happens to a patient, the doctor is going to get screwed. He says, no, it's an FDA approved device. He doesn't even know FDA standards, but that seal is important. 4, sales and distribution. You cannot have a guy earning 10 lakhs selling a device that costs you 1 lakh. It's not going to work. The GE's ECG machine, everybody talks about it, brilliant innovation, it's failed when it comes to sales and distribution because the high cost channel sells a low cost product. In the Indian context, you need to look at the channel you're going to distribute. Then you need to break down the process such that the doctor just does one aspect of the imaging because he will have 50 other patients outside. So the actual device user in an Indian context is going to be somebody else. Now here's where cloud comes in. Here's where mobility comes in because the doctor at the front end is not competent to make the judgment based on whatever he sees. He needs to have access to another doctor. Everybody's heard of telemedicine in India for years together. You know why it doesn't work? There's nothing wrong with the technology. There's no doctor wanting to sit at the other end of the pipe. No doctor wants to sit at the other end and provide the consulting because it's difficult, right? So how do you break it down? In an Indian context, using technology, how do you change it? We've spent a lot of time here, and this is the Indian customer pyramid. You cannot go wrong with this. The largest customer in India for any damn thing is the government. You love them or you hate them. They move slow, they move fast. But you want to make money or you want to solve a problem at large scale, you have to work with the government. Large enterprises, there are only 5,000 of them. Frankly speaking, the way I define the Indian technology market, we have all the big tech companies in India, yet we have only a small number of large companies. So it's a hyper-competitive market at that segment. Then you have medium enterprises. This is where a lot of people are trying to make money on technology. What people are not looking at is what you can do in the consumer space, in the SMB space, in India. Because with the technologies that you have in India, given the age of the population, and I brought this point up earlier, it's a native to IT population. You can experiment on anything you want because the people are people who are born into technology, the youngest population in the world at the largest scale. right? So you're having people who are passing out today. If you're a BCom graduate, you pass out having learned Tally as an accounting software, right? So you're tech enabled on day one, right? Everybody uses a mobile device today. They understand what they can do with it. Question is, what are companies doing with the technology? Everybody knows about Aadhaar. I'm not going to talk about it, but I am going to talk about two of my favorite examples. One is Mac Healthcare. They're looking at electronics health records in India, completely done on a cloud. Recently, Narayana Hrudayalaya partnered with HCL to have a cloud solution. Why is cloud interesting in the Indian context? The Narayana Hrudayalaya COO spent some time, right? He said 10 years back, we were a 200-bed hospital. We had an HIS. 3 years later, we were a 1,000-bed hospital. We had an HIS, second HIS, because the first was not good enough. 3 years later, we had an 8,000-bed hospital with 24 different cities. My HIS doesn't meet expectations. I need an HIS that will grow with me. I am outgrowing my technology solution faster than the technology is. It's a totally different problem. Nowhere in the world will a customer come and say, dude, my business is growing faster than your technology can, right? That's the thing. But how do you implement it? He gave a very interesting insight. I can't name the vendor. When they were looking for the recent partnership, they called all the global vendors. One particular vendor came to Narayana Hrudayalaya with 14 people. 6 of them had flown down from UK, 4 of them had flown down from the US, 2 of them from Bangalore, 2 from Bombay. The 12 people who were from outer station stayed in the Leela Palace. They came in 3 Innova cars. They were there for 2 days. They did requirements gathering and went back. This is what the COO tells me. Karthik, we do heart surgery at 60,000 rupees, which is the cheapest in the world. My tech guy came here with 12 people who stayed in Leela Palace, flew business class. How is it going to be viable for me? My technology cost of delivery of a solution in the Indian context has to be low. Aadhaar is brilliant. How much do you think is the cost of technology in each UID card? It is the lowest of all components, right? They pay more money for incentivizing people to sign up. They pay more money for distribution. They pay more money for everything else. The tech cost per UID card is the lowest. And I can give you that split, right? So you need to understand in Indian context, how do you take the technology, apply it to a problem at scale, take the context at a higher level, and figure it out how to make it work. This is an interesting example of Mahindra Finance, right? So they do financing of tractors. I'm pretty sure many of you would have heard of this. The nearest customer for Mahindra Finance is 300 kilometers away from the nearest branch. So they had an ERP solution. Now what used to happen was, by the time the nearest branch updated the system, there was a 15-day cycle lag that happened, resulting in an EMI default reflecting on a customer, right? There was a problem. It's an intrinsic problem because the client has not defaulted. So they came up with a handheld device. Here's where Indian, you might want to call it ingenuity, you might want to call it jugaad, whatever you like to. They got a US device that cost about $1.5 lakh, brought it to India, reverse engineered the product in Coimbatore for 10,000 bucks. The device comes with an OS, handheld, it has got image recognition, so you've got a photo, you've got a scanner, you've got a receipt printer, and when you're buying a tractor, invariably the collateral, I'm told, can be as much as a buffalo or a set of sheds. So he's actually going to be able to take a photograph of something on the ground and do this, right? This product, leveraging cloud, and has 3 access to the net. It can take a SIM, it can go connect to a LAN, it can do whatever it is transforming the way they're connecting. The reason I bring all this up is, it's very easy to get stuck in the technology architecture of a problem. But if you ask me, that is the least of the problem. I always say this, technology, believe me, is never a problem. The problem is the customer. How do I reach the customer? How do I serve the customer? And which of these technologies, in what form, is going to solve my problem the most? And a recent pilot that I'm personally running, as I told you, I'm working at Social Impact Ventures right now. There are 4,000 disabled people in Karnataka, or specially abled people, blind, deaf and dumb, handicapped, whatever, it could be multiple, who've been trained on digitizing content. They've been trained to take a book, scan it. They've been trained to take these old scriptures and scan it. What they use today, believe it or not, they have present in 170 taluks in Karnataka. The backend technology is cloud. So they can actually scan a book, store it, upload it. Look at the potential. 4,000 people with disabilities who can be employed if they're looking to solve a problem. Google and all the other companies are looking at digitization. This is what I had in mind. Any questions? Broad idea, as I said, was to tell you that don't take the technology angle, look at it slightly bigger, because most times people get stuck. So most startups at least come to us and say the same thing. I have a cool piece of technology, I'm looking for a customer. It should be the reverse. Any questions? Right then, thank you so much and have a great weekend.
I'd like to thank Karthik and a small token of appreciation from UBM India.